Well, good evening, Jeremy.
Hey, Steven.
How's it going?
Oh, it's pretty good. I'm just tweeting about this stream again.
I already did. That's why we had that sweet 30-second countdown. That was for all the Twitter.
Oh, so you beat me to it.
All right, we have a few people watching right now. If you're watching, feel free to say something in the chat, because otherwise it's going to be Jeremy and I hanging out playing video games. But we are happy to talk about Angular and happy to engage with the world.
Yeah, so Steven has a newborn child, so this is really just an excuse for us to hang out and make it seem like it's work.
Exactly. I get to use my work computer for it and everything, because my main computer is it's having a little trouble right now.
All right, we have Alejandro said hi in the chat. Hi, Alejandro.
Hello, Alejandro. Where are you currently situated in the vast world that we live in, Alejandro? And while he is answering, because there's going to be a delay on all the questions, what is Hades? I've played it for like 2 minutes. It looks like you're the son of Hades and you're trying to escape. So it's semi-roguelike with a meta progression system.
Yes, it is exactly that. The main character is Zagreus, and you are trying to escape from the underworld, from Hades, and your father is Hades, the god of death, and it's wonderful. It is the indie game of the year from all media outlets.
Which year?
From 2020.
I thought it came out in 2019.
No, it came, well, it went into early access in 2019. It hit 1.0 in 2020, and that's when it actually like became big.
Got it. All right, awesome. And Alejandro's from Uruguay, so that's awesome.
All right, so
are you muted? No, you're not muted. Okay.
No, I'm not muted. So I'm gonna start playing Hades. I'm gonna try to play on. So I've basically beaten the game. I've gotten every achievement, and what you unlock eventually is a system called heat, where the higher you turn the heat up, the more difficult the game gets, and you get a special statue if you beat the game on 32 heat, and I haven't done that yet. And okay. So I'm going to be trying to do that. I'm going to fail, but you can watch what the game will look like eventually. So I'm going to give up this practice run I was doing.
So did you beat it on 31 heat or no? Like
no.
You're just going straight to the max?
The furthest I've gotten is I did 30 heat and I almost beat it on 30 heat. I had the final boss down to like 2% health when I died, and so that's as close as I've gotten. And so the neat thing about the heat is that you actually get to set the things that make it difficult. So for example, I could make myself take more damage from traps here, but I don't like that because I'm prone to falling in the traps. So I'm gonna play with this as is.
Oh, so you choose where the heat comes from.
Exactly.
I have no idle time to spare, boy. I will observe the part of work upon my desk. Don't play with Thanatos, or Hypnos, or Dog. I need to finish this.
Sometimes you get a little memory of your papa before you start.
Here's to my friends and family.
But don't you like have to walk past him anyway?
Right.
Did you just get a new upgrade?
Yeah, so you, as you go through, you collect boons from the various gods on Olympus to help you with your escape.
And are those permanent or temporary?
It's just for the run.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of different weapons. You start off with just a sword. I'm using a shield as my weapon. This is called the Shield of Chaos.
Wait, how are you using a shield as your weapon?
So I can throw it, or I can do this like shield bash. That was bad. So one of the things...
Are you going to die in the first room? Because that'd be really embarrassing for Angular at this point.
Oh, no. I might die on the first boss if I get unlucky. I'm kind of depending on the fact that I get some decent boons along the way. Ah. This is also really annoying. One of the heat options I have turned on is that every enemy gets kind of like these random perks. And the worst one is that it spawns a bunch of these like phantom enemies. And so you just kind of get overwhelmed if you get unlucky enough to get a room full of those.
So here's a question. Why didn't we pick a multiplayer game that we could play with the community? Be like
I
open
thought
source.
this would be impressive. Next time we do this, we can play a multiplayer game. We can do...
Minecraft?
No, not Minecraft. I don't like Minecraft. I've never
Factorio?
played it.
There were, I think I mentioned on Twitter that I liked Factorio, and someone said that they wanted to play. So I think we could get a Factorio group together as long as Jeremy's willing.
See, I have never played Factorio, but I don't like the way it looks. The art style is really off-putting.
I mean, they've improved it a bunch in the last few months. Not in the last few months. Leading up to 1.0, they did a full graphic upgrade overhaul.
What are some large scale multiplayer games one could play, right? That where you could play with
Factorio can be played with hundreds of people.
Oh, well.
Yeah, because what is there? There's Minecraft, there's Factorio. Is there multiplayer Terraria that we could play online?
I don't know what the max player count on Terraria is, but also I haven't played it in years.
But you love to use some Terraria. I know you do.
Well, I mean, it's still my most played game of all time on Steam. But it's been updated so many times that I wouldn't even recognize it anymore.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We are going to have NGConf 2022 LAN party. Instead of flying, we drive, we bring our desktops, and we set up an evening, and we legit just play video games with everybody all night.
That sounds great. Just play StarCraft 1.
Unreal Tournament.
Yep. That was my high school LAN party experience, was playing StarCraft and Unreal Tournament 2001 or something.
2K4? UT 2K4 was the bomb.
That was probably it. I don't remember the year.
There was Game of the Year edition was really popular, and then 2K4 was very popular. And then 2005 or whatever wasn't that popular, and then nobody played 3. I used to love Unreal Tournament. That was my game. Capture the Flag, Oblivion, all those sorts of games. I was really into LAN parties in college. So what I did is I actually rented the city hall, and it cost $150 to rent City Hall. And I had a LAN party with room for everybody and tables and power. But this was early 2000s or mid 2000s, and so the Wi-Fi, the wired networks didn't exist in a lot of places, because it's basically a cafeteria almost. I don't know why the city hall was like that. It was just old. And so we ended up running the entire LAN party off of my G1, my HTC Dream, my original Android phone with tethering. And what I did was I tethered to my PFSense, my router box, and then literally supplied internet to the entire LAN party. And people were playing World of Warcraft over my phone's network connection.
Through adversity comes innovation, or something like that.
We have a question about Angular here. So I was checking Angular roadmap, and I saw better developer ergonomics with strict typings for Angular forms. Will this feature be released with Angular 12?
It probably won't be in Angular 12 at this point.
My question, or my answer to every when will it come out, is we don't know, because because we try and do time-based releases, but it's not like it's in the planning stage. It's not in the development phase. Is my understanding right now.
Yeah.
One of the things I would love to see is taking advantage of some of the community solutions. Like they're all. Anytime you add typings to something, you're breaking the world, and so trying to find a way to do this without breaking all of the Angular apps out there is hard, and that's the kind of the core of this challenge, right?
Yeah,
Like, adding typings to form is not hard.
There's
not
two parts to it. So there's the part where we not break people who are using Angular CLI, which means we actually have to write TypeScript AST transforms that go into people's code and update the types for them so their app isn't broken anymore. And then the other part of it is that we actually have to fix all of the Google applications that are doing this as well, which is kind of a whole separate process we have to run inside of Google, where we have to get like approval from a committee to write a change that affects all of Google's code base and stuff like that. So making a breaking change like that takes a ton of time for us, just in terms of not breaking people. If it was just a matter of going and like writing the PR to update the types, that would take like a day.
One thing that you can do if you're interested in this sort of feature is making sure that we are understanding your use case. And so like commenting on GitHub with like your specific needs of like, what APIs do you want typed and how do you want them typed? Those sort of things always get listened to as part of our planning, as part of our like decision-making process. Like we can't guarantee we're going to do what you need, but understanding the breadth and the depth of the challenges that people are facing helps us fix things in the right way. So if you haven't put your needs into a comment on a GitHub issue, do that. I recommend that for everybody, no matter what kind of problem you're facing or what kind of change you want to see in Angular.
Yeah, most of our work right now is focused on basically doing all the like stuff we need to do to get rid of Vue Engine and have Ivy be the only engine for Angular that's in our code base anymore. So like this top stuff people are working on is like the language service based on Ivy, right? So that you can get code completion and stuff like that in your editor. And that's going to be based on the Ivy compiler. And also,
Didn't that just hit like RC or something? Because I've been out for 2 months, but I thought I saw that.
Stephen?
Didn't that just hit RC or beta?
It is. I think the preview is in 11.1. Or sorry, yeah, 11.1.
So coming soon, or is 11.1 already out?
11.1 RC came out yesterday.
So the preview's in RC. Got it.
Yes.
So at next, just go install at next.
It's pretty far along. Obviously, I don't want to commit to anything, but it's looking pretty good. Ooh, Sisyphus.
Do you have all these boons memorized?
Pretty much.
You're picking them pretty quick.
So like I can talk through what these like this little key here, right? This is normally you would spend the keys on upgrades, but I already have all the upgrades, and so what I get from them is when I pick up a key, I get a chance to re-roll pickup when I get it. So this is really hard right now. So I can either go here, and the reward for this is just going to be some coins I can spend at the shops, or this one, which I'll get 2 boons from. But whichever one I don't pick first, the other one will get really mad, and you have to like clear the room while they're blasting you. I'm going to take a risk and go for it because I want the Poseidon boon. This is Poseidon and Dionysus. This one's pretty good for bosses, but it's not going to help me clear rooms. Oh well, I'll go for it. It really sucks when Dionysus is mad at you.
Does it suck worse than when Poseidon's mad at you?
I would rather have Dionysus than Poseidon. I think Poseidon's is harder to avoid.
So good choice. A whole bunch more people
at least hard to
watching.
avoid.
So if you just joined the stream, Jeremy and I are playing games and talking Angular. So if you have questions, feel free to add them to the chat, or questions about Angular, questions about anything we're working on, questions about us, anything people want to chat about. And then meanwhile, Jeremy is trying to look really impressive while playing Hades.
There's the real one. That's like the worst possible thing I could get in this room.
The boss thing?
No, these witches that shoot bolts at you. I got the ones that have like these little phantom clones of them, so I'm getting like wrecked from bolts all over the room.
I thought you just died. What happened?
I have 3 lives.
Oh. Well, can you get lives back?
Yes, actually.
Where is your life counter? I don't see any life counters.
Bottom left above my health bar. Where
So
is
you
the
2
real
already, or? You're about to die, Jeremy.
I know I'm about to die. This is the worst possible room I could get.
Stop dying so much, Jeremy. So no more lives?
No more lives. This is my last life.
Why don't you just kill the enemies, Jeremy?
Because I have to find the real one. There's a bunch of like fakes in here, and if I kill those, it doesn't do anything. And then they also teleport around. And so even if I find it, it could teleport away. And
Yeah, you're done. You're absolutely done. Health. Not a chance, Jeremy.
yeah, that was really unlucky. I don't think I've ever gotten a room that bad.
What was I supposed to do? Oh, surprise.
All right. How many people are on the stream?
We've got 9 watching right now.
Hello, 9 people.
We had 10, but they saw that you were losing, and now we're down to 7.
Yeah, I got pretty unfortunate that time.
Alejandro, you're the only one chatting. What game would you like to play with us next time? Or if we can convince Jeremy to stop playing Hades.
All right, I'm gonna give one more shot. And then Steven, you can go. I want to see you give it a whirl.
Oh, but that'll just be embarrassing. Like you're losing with 32 heat, and I will just lose level 1.
Ooh, okay. We're off to a good start.
Why are you off to a good start?
I got an epic boon from Zeus, which is exactly the one I wanted.
What's an epic boon?
The boons you can get from the Olympians have different rarities, like World of Warcraft rarities, like common, rare, epic, legendary.
Oh, so like Cyberpunk 2077 rarities.
Say that again. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think World of Warcraft was the first game to use those rarities, but I think it's the game that popularized them. So I always think of them as World of Warcraft rarities.
Okay.
This one's going pretty well so far.
I mean, you've cleared 1 room. So.
Yeah, but I got the boon I wanted, and then I also got an upgrade for it. So my damage output's pretty high relative to where I am in the game.
So this is going to be you beating it with 32 heat?
It depends a lot on whether that luck holds up.
Why don't you swap the heat that lets them have random attributes as often and instead do the traps? I think you could learn to avoid a trap or two, couldn't you?
I'm just really bad at avoiding the traps. Every time I do it, I die from the traps. The traps get much more vicious at the later stages of the game.
Are you fishing right now?
Yeah, there was a fishing spot.
But, okay.
Skillascion.
What is a skillascion?
Some kind of fish in the river Styx.
Okay. I feel like you're really bad at this game, Jeremy.
So the thing that's getting me the most is that the enemies are 40%. One of the heat things I have turned on is that they're 40% faster, which really throws off my timing.
Santosh is asking what game this is.
This is Hades. It's made by Supergiant Games, which is one of the best indie game studios out there. They're based in San Francisco.
Are they still indie though?
Oh, they're definitely indie.
So they have like publisher, like everyone knows their games now.
That doesn't mean they're not indie.
They're not EA.
They're not EA. They're not Activision or Blizzard.
Is CD Projekt Red indie?
No. CD Projekt Red is a AAA studio.
How do you define AAA studio though? Like
Size and budget.
Okay.
There's probably
So
an official definition of it, but I don't know what it is. All right, what do I get?
What's an
Not
informal
really.
classification by a mid-sized or major publisher? So no, CD Projekt Red is not a major publisher.
See, I don't know, because Cyberpunk is definitely a AAA game. Right? It has budget, like a massive tens and tens of millions of dollars budget with all
Let
the
me run down the list here for you. So Wikipedia, which anyone could edit at any time, says that based on revenue, it's Tencent, Sony, Apple, Microsoft, Activision, NetEase, Google, EA, Nintendo, Bandai Namco. And they say below that is AA video game publishers, like Telltale Games, Paradox Interactive, Take-Two.
Where does Devolver Digital fall in?
They're number 7 on the midsize.
Oh, Steven, do we have another question?
What about Protractor Cypress is becoming a real good one? I mean, to use Cypress like default end-to-end. Yes. I think a lot of developers prefer Cypress. And I think generally the team wants to make that easy. I think it's on the roadmap that we're trying to figure out an end-to-end story. And the story is very similar with the question we had earlier, where a lot of the changes to Angular have to happen very slowly, even if there's like a really good solution like Cypress, because of compatibility and helping people migrate and move with us. So while Cypress, like we actually talked to the Cypress team, there's schematics for Cypress. Like we want all these things to exist. We want it to be very easy. Moving all developers over to Cypress is a harder thing that would invalidate all of the testing guides out there, all of the training, all the education. And so like we're looking at how do you evolve the ecosystem without taking away people's freedom, without kind of breaking all the existing code and making people feel like there's churn in the ecosystem. So what I would say is, if you like Cypress today, use Cypress. Like, do not wait. There's great schematics. There's really good support in Angular. If you want Cypress to be the default, just keep saying that out loud, because we base a lot of our decisions based on what the community is saying. But one vision of this would be, what if Angular was actually less opinionated about testing? And so instead of giving people Protractor, we said, here's your Angular app. Do you want to add in Protractor or Cypress or something else?
Yeah, I think that's, like, personally, I think that's the way to go, right? Like, we do that for ng deploy, where, like, we don't have an opinion about where you deploy to. You just pick what works for you. And I think that we should be doing the same thing for testing solutions. Like, a big chunk of context here is that in the ecosystem when Protractor was created was extremely different than the ecosystem today, right? Tools like Cypress just didn't even exist back then. And so Protractor existed to fill in a gap of, like, trying to make end-to-end testing even possible in the first place. And since that time, WebDriver has evolved a lot. Things like Puppeteer and what's the other Puppeteer-like thing called?
Playwright?
Playwright, yeah. Like, things like that have come into existence. Cypress has come into existence. Jest has come into existence. And so the rationale for having something like Protractor at all is diminished. But at the same time, we have hundreds upon hundreds of tests inside of Google that are built with Protractor, and we can't just be like, that's not the thing anymore, right? We have to find a way to bring all of those tests along with whatever we decide into the future.
When I look at, is this a boss?
No, this is actually my friend. We have a little competition to see who can kill the most people in this room. I'm pretty sure he's gonna win, but if I do beat him, I get some extra health.
Nice. If I had to give 2021 a summary, I would call it consistency, where 2021 is about being consistent with the ecosystem, consistent within Angular. So there's not multiple ways of doing things that are officially supported, and that when we do want there to be multiple ways of doing things, when we want to be less opinionated, you are able to be consistent with the way you want to be building. Whether that's, like, we actually did this, the strategy Jeremy talked about. We did that strategy when it came to linting, where TSLint is kind of on its way out, but a lot of apps are just built for TSLint and can't be migrated to ESLint. And there's no automatic migrations that we can do. So what did we do? We kind of took a step back and we said, hey, you can plug in the linting system that you want and be consistent with whatever, like, development practices you have around linting, whatever the best of the ecosystem are. And so I think something similar with testing probably the vision, but at the same time, we care about the end-to-end journey of Angular. We can't just say, we don't care at all about testing, it's your problem, right? Like, we want to be making sure that people can build and test great apps, because, like, as Jeremy said, like, at Google, we have to make sure that we're making that promise to everybody at Google that they can build and test great apps. And Jeremy died. So you actually have 4 lives then, because I saw 3 extra lives down there.
I have 3 extra lives, right? So I have, like, a total of 4 goes.
So how far are you from escaping the underworld?
This is the first tier, you could call it, or, like, biome or level or whatever your term you want to use. There are a total of 4.
And each tier has a boss?
Yes. The 4th one is much smaller than the rest, though.
So, like, in terms of clock time, how long does beating all 4 tiers theoretically take?
A typical run might take like half an hour. I don't think I'm going to get super far this go.
I mean, if you keep dying on tier 1, it's not looking good for you.
No, actually, I was doing much better. So I was playing this a ton before I got Cyberpunk, and I was getting reliably up to the final boss with most of my lives. But I am rusty now after not playing this for a few weeks.
Maybe you can show off later your cyberpunk character. Lars says that Jest and Cypress is a great combo, and I totally agree with that. The ergonomics of those APIs makes a lot of sense. There are some things people like. There's limitations that don't affect most people that definitely affect some applications that, if you're not aware, can really bite you. Like the fact that Jest and Cypress run in the browser. You can only instrument things you can do in JavaScript. You can't instrument user behaviors like accessibility in the same way. And that's something that the Cypress team is actually thinking about and working on. So there are limitations in kind of the mental models different than what WebDriver can do or what you could do with Puppeteer or Playwright. But for most people, it just kind of magically solves the problems and makes it way easier to start testing. Because in general, tests with Cypress that are easy to build and maintain is going to be better than not testing with some complicated full solution. Jeremy, you only have 2 health left.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think we boy, I'm just not doing great tonight.
See, we need more questions so that Jeremy keeps dying.
Yeah. Once I die from this run, I want to see you have a go. But yeah, on the topic of testing, one interesting point of consideration that we have with this is that inside Google, people really care about testing on real browsers. And so things like Cypress and Jest are kind of just culturally not very appealing to most Google product teams because they very much care about running on the real, like Firefox, IE, whatever, and getting the real representation of user input on those environments. And so that's something we have to weigh whenever we're considering like ecosystem level moves.
We also have another question here from Equinox. I'm not 100%. This is still not working, but it's not when using VS Code to get autocomplete for Angular material. You first have to import something before it starts suggesting things.
Hold on.
Jeremy, any thoughts on that one? Or
I don't know about this specifically. I did see an issue recently where the way TypeScript's like auto import stuff works is that it kind of assumes that you only have one level of depth in your packages. So because we have these secondary entry points in all the Angular packages, the TypeScript tool just doesn't know about them, and so it doesn't offer auto imports. And I think my current understanding is that like something in TypeScript would have, like TypeScript or VS Code would have to change in order to fix that. I think WebStorm is able to do this already. But there's also a chance that there's something maybe we could tweak to trick VS Code into identifying these. I don't know.
Let's see here.
I'm gonna leave my...
Beats dying.
All right, I got a life back.
woohoo! Did you defeat a tier?
Yeah, I escaped from Tartarus, and now I'm going into Asphodel.
The Asphodel Meadows.
Ooh.
And then after Asphodel is Elysium.
Theoretically, we could fix this if primary endpoints were actually optimized properly by all of the other tooling. Right? Like it'd be nicer to import button component or button module from Angular material than Angular/material/button.
Debatable. But yeah, like if the module splitting and tree shaking like worked perfectly everywhere else, you could potentially do that. But even in those situations, right, you still have like there are valid use cases for UMDs. And so for Angular material, you would end up with like insanely massive UMDs and like stack blitz.
But I mean, you could offer both, right? Maybe offer the secondary.
No, you only ever want one way to do things, right? Anytime you have multiple ways to accomplish the same thing, it just makes things more confusing. Right.
But why? Like, you don't. I don't feel like in 2022 we're going to need UMDs in the same way we need them today.
I don't know. I feel like the state of tooling for things like that moves really slowly.
I mean, StackBlitz is really trying to push the limit there. That's one of the reasons. I'm really excited for their future.
Ooh, Artemis or Hermes?
Artemis, of course.
I'm gonna go for Hermes because I need. So all of Hermes is kind of a unique one.
Bloodless.
Oh boy.
What are those big circles of death? Because they don't look like fun. They look kind of like just frustrating.
What big circles of death?
I'll tell you when I see one.
I feel like I haven't gotten any boom in a while.
Alejandro's coughing in the stream. He's elbow coughing. Please don't spread digital COVID. Thanks, Alejandro. Great questions. That's the circle of death. There's a
I
little
didn't see it. I wasn't.
You clearly dodged it. It's like a build up to an explosion, it looks like.
Oh, well, when some of the enemies die, they'll throw a little thing that blows up. Maybe it was that. A lot of this is reflex, but now when I don't consciously process it. It could also be the lava spurts coming out of the well, I guess it's magma here. We're below ground.
It's a bomb that explodes when you hit it. This is Alexander Hammer. Yes. Are the enemies putting that? Is that part of the level? Like that's more my question. You did it.
None of these are what I want, really.
Reroll it then.
More options.
So this one, you can dash more times in a row is good. I wish the rarity were higher. I'm going to reroll again and try to get a higher rarity one of those.
Hey, got anything else?
What currency are you using to reroll?
The little polyhedron dice. Well, that didn't work out. I'll get this.
It's at least rare.
Yeah, it's better, but Not what I wanted. I wanted the extra dashes because the dashes give you iframes.
So what other games are you playing right now, Jeremy?
Age of Calamity on the Switch, which is co-op. You and Stephanie could play it if you ever had child free time.
Is that Hyrule Age of Calamity or something?
Yeah, it's Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. It's the prequel to Breath of the Wild.
But it's not a Zelda game. It's like a.
It is not a Zelda game mechanically. It is a Dynasty Warriors game. But in a way, that's almost better probably for the like couch co-op case, because really you're just like running around Zelda areas and just fighting massive hordes of enemies, and it's pretty easy, and it's just kind of a like sit back and chill kind of game, run around while you smash up some moblins.
See, I feel like Hades is just like Diablo, but like I don't know how much I like the roguelike experience. I almost prefer the storytelling of Diablo.
You'll have to give it a shot. Let's see, there's a question. Are there Angular code bases you like to look at to get inspiration on how to build your components or structure your app?
I think Jeremy's had to be the example for everybody as one of the first people to kind of do some of these things.
Yeah, that is actually my goal, is to be the example. Which I don't necessarily know that we do a great job of all the time.
So basically, look at Jeremy's code and do everything he does and never listen to anything he says.
Now, if I had enough free time to work on my side project app that I want to work on, that could be a good example, but I haven't gotten to work on that in like 6 months.
I maintain a whole bunch of Angular applications, but I wouldn't say look at any of their source code, because when I develop for personal projects, I develop until it works and then I stop.
Yeah, if anything, most of the apps I see, I only ever see the problems, because most of the time when I'm looking at an app, it's because I'm debugging something, whether to provide support to someone or to fix a failure when we make a breaking change, or a change that's not supposed to be breaking, but someone's test is failing anyway, very rudely. And so I tend to only see the annoying parts.
I'd maybe say any component library from a large team, because the more people that are working on a code base, the more maintainable, legible it's going to be. And so looking at something like Clarity from VMware, or some of the stuff that like Deutsche Bank has just open sourced recently.
I don't know if I agree with that statement, Stephen, of the more people who work on it, the better it is.
I think it's got a higher chance of success than just a small little project. Because one of the challenges is also Angular material, it has a ton of history. Like, it's very good, but it's solving every problem for everybody. And like, if you're going to build your own components, you probably want to start simpler, right? Like, if you're solving that problem, the scale and magnitude of the problem that Angular material is solving, then yes, like your code's going to end up looking very similar to that. But if you're solving a smaller scale problem, it's probably not going to be a good example.
Yeah, I mean, and there are also things that we do in Angular material specifically because material design calls for it, that makes some of the components that would conventionally be very simple more complicated. And so a good example of that is the button. You would think button is a very simple, very, very simple component. But it ends up pulling in a fair amount of complicated stuff.
You have one hit point, by the way. You're about to die.
Yeah, I know, I have 1 health. because, for example, the way ripples work, material design has this concept of ripples, and in the earlier iterations of material design, the ripples were used as the focus treatment for buttons, which is fine, except that the focus treatment is something that persists after you've interacted with the control. And so that focus treatment, when it's a ripple, people would click on the button and then the ripple would just like stay there. And it's like, oh, well, it looks like the ripple never went away. That looks like a bug, when it actually was working as intended. And so we ended up doing this compromise where we only show like the ripple focus indicator when the interaction came from keyboard events, but not from pointer events. And it's debatable as to whether or not that was the right move, but that makes something even as simple as button that much more complicated. So I'm going to quit out now. I'm apparently too rusty to even get to Elysium. And I think you should take a pass at playing Hades, Stephen.
All right, I would, but we have our dear friend Hades just crashed here. So should I try Vulcan? Think that would work better?
I have no clue.
What is it going to be? Hades? What's the binary called? So I can stop it. There it is. Kill. Kill 9. Okay, it's gone. Come on, Steam. Realize that Hades is no longer running. All right, so we're going to play. And I tested this earlier, so this totally should work.
Yeah, I saw your game.
It's something's going here.
While you figure that out, I'm going to go get some water.
Do I dare hit the play button again, Jeremy? I can't get rid of the Steam overlay either. Do I just need to kill Steam? Start over again. All right. We're doing it live. We're going to kill Steam. Oh, look. This, okay, Steam's actually shut down now, so we're going to relaunch Steam. We're going to share my screen so that everyone can see the fun struggles I'm having.
Someone asked, can we expect to see something from Angular like React Native in the future? The closest thing out there is probably in the native script, right?
But like, again, I would love to know what problem you're trying to solve. The easiest solution right now for code sharing Angular projects that target mobile APIs would be Capacitor, which is pretty good. They just launched Capacitor 3.0 beta. So they keep investing in it. The usage is growing. There's also NativeScript, but my problem with NativeScript is that you have to write your app with separate UI layers for every platform you're targeting, and that's just not fun. I like the idea of code sharing.
Yeah. I think kind of strategically on the Angular side, our focus for mobile experiences is going to be on PWAs. I don't see us doing anything for native mobile applications directly as a first-party thing, in part because we just don't have the expertise on the Angular team to tackle that problem. Like we're very much a bunch of like web experts, and it would take a different skill set to do native mobile stuff.
So, I mean, I came from the mobile space actually before joining Google. Like, I worked at a mobile app dev company, and we work a lot with Ionic, and we work a lot with the NativeScript team. So, like, I'm almost dead. So this is embarrassing.
Yeah. Also, the frame rate coming in on your video is super low.
Oh, I've got no frames at all. Like I don't know what's going on here. I think it's because I chose Vulkan. Why does it shift tab the? Here, let's quit. Let's try DirectX again.
Yes, the question here, what do we think about the size of Angular applications? Will Angular applications be more lightweight at the next release? This is something we're always working on, is making things smaller. One of the things, let's see, I have to actually go look at our roadmap to make sure I'm talking about the things that are actually on it. But I think one of the future things that is very much high on our minds is being able to add in, to make Zone.js optional, right? So people can opt out of zones. I think that's going to be one of the biggest improvements in terms of like payload size in the future, and that zones is like 40K. And it does a lot of heavy lifting in terms of figuring out when change detection needs to happen. But it comes at a cost. And the fact that it needs to go away, right? The fact that it needs to become optional is kind of inevitable, because zones doesn't work with native async await. So that is going to be happening one way or another. It won't be happening in like V12 or anything, but it is coming up on our, our project queue. And I'm trying to think, like, what are the other specific things we have in mind for reducing payload size?
My understanding is that removal of the Ivy compatibility APIs will have some benefit.
That will make a small improvement.
We've also dramatically improved build speed because we don't have to do the second compilation every time, I think.
Yeah. Andrew Kushner is doing some exploration on, right now, there's like separate code for style and class bindings. And he's doing some exploration that combines them into just like one code path. I think that could simplify it a little bit. But again, these are like small improvements. Off the top of my head, I don't have anything in mind for like there's no like big obvious things for us to cut out from the framework itself. At this point, it's all just very little like bits and pieces here and there. Steven, do you want advice on which boon to pick?
No. Yeah, sure.
Which one did you take? I didn't see.
The chain lightning casting.
Oh, that was pretty good. They're all pretty good.
I picked a rare one because you said that there's rarity.
Yeah.
I can't wait till my
we have tests on our CI that like make sure like the payload size doesn't go up over time, right? And so we're very mindful of payload size. It's just that Angular does a lot.
That most apps are not the base of Angular. Like the base of Angular is at most like 200 KB, and then it's all of the like features that you add in, like all the libraries and all the dependencies. That's where we see like apps jumping up into like a meg and a half. What's this? I like hearts. Let's go with heart.
Heart is a boon from Aphrodite.
How do I dash? Space?
Oh, you're using keyboard and mouse?
What are you using?
I use a controller. I got a Xbox 360 controller I use for this.
I have thousands of controllers.
Yeah, I very much recommend a controller for this game.
Oh, why is that?
The auto aim, right? The aim assist is extremely good in this game compared to like using a mouse. Yeah. So for anybody who's joined the stream recently, hello. We're just hanging out, and Steven is playing Hades for the first time ever. And
I played 15 minutes before I jumped on the stream,
Okay.
so I'm an expert. I don't know what you're talking about, Jeremy.
You're still in your first session ever.
Also, I'm getting like 10 frames per second, and so it's really bad.
Yeah, it's probably because we're running on Linux.
No, I think it's this PC, because I was playing on my machine earlier and it was great. I thought the work computer would do better, but I was wrong.
If anybody also has questions about not just Angular, but like web infrastructure at Google, obviously there's some stuff we can't talk about, but it's also something that we deal with.
Jeremy and I know a fair amount about it. It's very violent when you die.
Also accessibility. I spend a lot of time in accessibility these days. We're playing Hades. Indie game of the year. Highly recommended. It's one of the 4 games on Steam I've gotten all the achievements on.
Do I have to talk to everybody every time?
That's how the story of the game plays out. If you don't, you'll just like they'll just be waiting there for the next time you come by and talk to them.
Okay.
But the story of the game is part of what makes it so good. So,
well, I mean, yeah, it's like a really cool idea. Like your father's Hades and you're trying to escape. Like, I love that idea.
And you build these relationships with all of the different chthonic and Olympian gods. The artwork is amazing. Supergiant is a master of game design, but that doesn't really convey it, right? Of the science of trade-offs in game design. They just do a really outstanding job with that. I watched a whole. I've been watching a documentary series about the making of this game as well.
Have you watched any of these documentaries about speedrunning communities? Like, these documentaries are just so good now.
I've seen a couple. I forget what the channel is called. It's like Summoning Salt? Is that the one?
I don't remember, but like I watched this one on the Super Nintendo, Mario Kart something or other, and it was just so amazing.
Yeah, I've seen I think a couple of those Summoning Salt videos. Did you watch any of AGDQ that just happened last week?
It happened last week?
Yep.
No. I wish. I love AGDQ.
Yeah, we were watching it on and off. There was some good stuff. It usually takes me like over the next month after AGDQ to just like watch the runs I'm interested in on YouTube afterwards.
How do they do it with COVID?
It's just all remote.
How did it? What? So it's just like streamers then, just like every day.
They've got their metaphorical couch on the stream with them so that they can still like explain the run as they go, which is why I like GDQ more than just watching speedruns.
Okay.
And also, you know, the charity.
Does this give me a key?
Yeah, you want to at the early game, you want to prioritize getting those keys because that's how you unlock the other weapons and how you unlock more power-ups on the mirror.
Wasn't that? I could have picked a purple thing though, right? Like that would also.
The keys are just rarer.
Okay, that's good to know. I feel like I'm just lagging through all these enemies. I'm not this good.
Yeah, your frame rate is just so crushingly bad.
It says it's 40. Do you see this in the corner?
Well, it's not coming through that well on the stream, at least.
No. I literally have 10 frames per second. Like, it's bad for me. I can barely see anything. Oh, I was doing so well, Jeremy. What happened? I was flawless victory.
You're doing great for
Attacking me?
your first hour. Ooh, you've got Artemis there.
Do I need to go get this thing back?
No, it'll come back to you automatically when you clear a room.
Wow. Artemis is a chick? Yeah, I knew that. I've read so many books with Artemis as a character that I'm not familiar with
Artemis
the
herself
plot.
would not like being referred to that way.
That was inappropriate of me to language. The goddess Artemis. Artemis is a goddess? Who is Artemis?
The goddess of the hunt.
But like, tell me a story about Artemis, Jeremy.
She'll tell you stories about herself if you get to know her better in the game.
Special. What's
Do the
special?
cast one.
Okay.
Artemis's cast is very good.
I am clearly an idiot.
Yeah, you got to play this with a controller.
Why do I have to play this with a controller?
It's just so much better.
I'm gonna kill these rocks. Got you, rocks. Take that. In the face, rocks. I'm gonna rock your world. No, laser beams, run. I swear like 3 frames ago I was at 70 health. What is nectar?
So nectar you can give as a gift to different NPCs to improve your relationship with them. The very first time you give nectar to someone, they'll give you a keepsake. And you can, whenever you start a run, you get to choose which keepsake you have equipped, and they all have different bonuses.
Why did my character just say uh-oh? That's scary. Don't say uh-oh.
One of the things I do love about this game is that Zagreus will often say exactly the same thing I'm thinking as I'm like going into or out of a room. It's a little uncanny at times.
I want to kill the one that's almost dead. Where'd he go? Oh my god, Jeremy, I only have 5 health left.
Yeah, but you got a Poseidon boon.
Is any of the sound coming through? I assume it's not.
No, it's not.
That's
I think for Poseidon, the first one there, the attack is going to be your.
because I'm good at it.
It's questionable. Both of like the attack and the special are both good.
No, Jeremy, I only have 5. Oh no, I have 6 life. So I'm gonna make it to tier 4, I think. What is that thing? Oh, it's a trap, run! I really have no idea what's going on because of this frame rate. I need my new PC.
Yep.
Do I have to keep playing, Jeremy?
You don't have to keep playing.
Can you show off your Cyberpunk character?
Maybe.
If anyone plays on Stadia, tell me your username because I'm looking for some Stadia friends.
You really want to see my Cyberpunk?
Yeah.
I don't even know if my computer can handle streaming and playing Cyberpunk at the same time.
What kind of computer do you have?
I built it mid 2017, I think. No, mid 2018. And I've got a 1080 Ti. I don't actually remember what CPU I have. Like 16 gigabytes RAM. It's a mini ITX case. But I feel like I built this computer. I got the 1080 Ti, and then like a month later, they announced the 2000 series of cards.
Yeah, but the 2000 series of cards are just terrible compared to the 3000 series.
Sure.
Like literally, they killed like the 2000s. Like, there's no reason to ever buy a 2000. Usually, it's like cheaper but worse. In this case, it's the new generation is actually cheaper. That's why I bought a 3000 generation graphics card in my new computer that arrives in 6 weeks.
Let's see.
I hear it. Let's see your screen here.
Let's see. Hold on. I have to.
We could also build an Angular app if people wanted us to.
What the heck? Never mind. Okay. I just have to put it in windowed mode in order for the streaming service to be able to find the window.
That's weird because I don't have that problem.
I have that problem. All right. You see me?
Let me add you to the stream. There we go. So what kind of guns do you have?
So here's my character. I've got like legendary everything, right? Everything I have is based on the number of equipment slots it has, and then I just have all epic and legendary things in them. My stupid.
Except your pistol.
This is Skippy.
I know. I've got the exact same thing, which is 2 legendary guns and Skippy.
Mm-hmm. The Widowmaker, I think, is like the best rifle. Like my build is all hacking and tech, and so I don't know if I have like anything nearby I can actually go do. I guess I can like go that.
Let's see your car. Hit the V button. Let's see what you got here. No, what's your default?
Default, I just use Jack's motorcycle.
Oh, really?
Hmm. I got this because it was the most expensive car. It does not handle well. But none of them really handle well.
I think my car handles really well. That is a huge car.
Yeah, it is enormous. Accelerates very quickly, though.
Probably doesn't accelerate as quickly as my car.
Oh. Yeah, this is going to be a really great game in 2 years. I had a lot of fun playing it, but it's missing just enough polish. Can I jump up there?
There.
No. Maybe over here. Yeah. So this is what my playstyle is like.
Okay, let's see.
I'm in. Let's see.
But you can kill the dude.
Whoops.
You should too.
I just accidentally jumped off the side. Didn't mean to do that. I didn't realize there was going to be a big fall.
Where are you going? You're lost, Jeremy.
Trying to get back.
You're going the wrong way, though.
I don't know where I'm going. What is even aggroing on me?
Everybody.
Why are they aggroing?
Bonjour, secrétaire.
But anyway, I just do this.
Are those NCPD?
No. That's 6th Street.
What about that guy? He's fine. That's what you do?
Normally, the contagion finishes them off.
All right. So I'm gonna switch to me now. Let's see if I can share my screen. Unless you want to show off decimating another enemy.
I mean, it's just you walk into the camp, you cast contagion, and then you walk away. The end.
All right. I'll share my screen now. That one. Maybe you'll get more than 6 frames per second. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
All right. So my character, if I could figure out how to do this, is... How do you get to your character? So technical ability, I'm clearly not as far along as Jeremy. Level 32. 18 technical ability, 17 reflexes. Because I like rifles. I think I'll do intelligence third. I'll probably get up to 20 reflexes, then go intelligence or body. Body's kind of interesting. I kind of like the idea of body.
I feel like body would be a fun play style. If I did another playthrough, I'd probably do that. We have some questions. It says, why is the styles property in the component decorator an array? Would it work with a single string of multiple CSS? Well, it's an array because it has multiple values. You can have a component have multiple style sheets, right? So if you wanted to include, like we even do this in Angular material in some places where it's like button common, right, between multiple types of button, and then the different types of button have like fab or icon button or whatever. And we don't do that exact thing for the different types of buttons, but that's the idea. Making it like a string that was delimited by something would just be like, we'd have to turn it into an array anyway. So why not just make it an array in the source?
I love this car.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like, why is styles an array? That's a good question. It couldn't. I guess it's just for symmetry with style URLs. Because when we do inlining, right, if we inline style URLs into styles, we just do like a one-to-one transform. So I don't see any other reason just for that symmetry. And says another question here: what skill should an Angular developer get, like other technologies in this year? There's so many. There's so many I don't even know how to answer. It depends on what you're interested in, and it depends on what your experiences are in. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. You can learn other programming languages. You can learn different storage or database systems. You can, if you're focusing on front end, right, you can learn other frameworks. You can learn like GraphQL. You can learn different like backend technologies for and what they're good for, right? Like Firebase versus what is like Next.js versus Gatsby, right? Like there's a million different services out there, different technologies. There's Sass, there's post CSS, there's the whole concept of CSS and JS. Stephen, what do you recommend people learn?
In this year, I think this year is going to be about, I think, integrated front end back ends, like as integrated as you can get, where like sharing TypeScript, like typing files across a backend and a front end with like something like Nest.js.
Actually, you know what? I take it back. What I would say is the most important thing to learn is web accessibility. It's only going to get more and more in demand over time as more and more companies realize they've been doing a terrible job at it. We've seen this inside of Google, where back in 2012, when I started at Google, very few product teams invested heavily in accessibility. And now you basically can't even launch a product without meeting a certain accessibility bar. And I see that trend going to be really catching on more and more in the industry at large, especially as kind of from a legal and compliance standpoint, we can, like, this hasn't happened yet, but we could end up in a situation where inaccessible web applications can become, like, might someday become a liability. And if you want to do any kind of business with public sector, right, accessibility is a hard requirement. And because accessibility is so difficult to get right, someone who has expertise in that is going to be very in demand. Another question here is, why do I have to sometimes use ngDeep when styling material components if I sell inside an encapsulating component splash rate? The reason for that is the way view encapsulation works, style encapsulation, is if you define a style in your component style sheet, Angular makes sure it only affects the elements that belong to that component and won't affect elements that belong to other components. So if you say you have like a user profile component, and inside of that user profile component, you have a list and a button, any styles that you define in that component's styles are only going to affect the elements that live in the user profile component, and none of the elements that live in that list component or in that button component, and so on. What ngDeep says is, like, just turn that encapsulation off for that rule declaration. Angular Material itself, we turn view encapsulation off for all of our styles, but you still have potentially encapsulation turned on in your own styles. We have a guide for this on the Angular Material website. It is called, what is it called? Customizing component styles. Here, I'll put it in the chat. I think that tries to explain why it works that way. This is actually kind of an interesting there's interesting trade-offs around doing view encapsulation. When I first joined the team back in like 2015, actually, I was a proponent of having view encapsulation off by default. And that position did not win out. And it's still hard to say whether it's like the right thing, because the way that any tool can emulate view encapsulation is, it's imperfect, because you can prevent styles from leaking out of a component, but you can't prevent styles from leaking in. And you also still need some kind of affordance for escaping that encapsulation barrier if you need to do any kind of customization. And that, like, that's why ngDeep exists, even though it's not ideal, because it's basically just saying, like, yeah, this ignores encapsulation and becomes a global style, but it's defined somewhere that is very much non-global. Eventually, CSS variables will play a big role in making this kind of thing easier, but not until IE 11 is something we can finally drop.
I mean, there's this fundamental tension between style systems were actually designed to be more global so that all of your site looks the same. and this idea that we're all building independent pieces that we don't want each, like we're building complicated software, we don't want to affect each other accidentally, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a tension there naturally. Look
This
at this
is
cool
the thing that,
car up here.
yeah, this is the thing that bothers me the most, though, about like there's a camp of thought of like, oh, web components and Shadow DOM are the future of everything, right? And that camp has been around for a long time. And my biggest problem with that is that Shadow DOM does not do anything to solve the problem of application-wide customization, right? It is very much focused on the use case of atomic, completely encapsulated components. And that works well if you are building standalone components that are unaware of the context in which they are used. That is not representative of the applications most people build. Most applications are composed of components that need to be aware of the context in which they're in for theming or error reporting or logging or, you know, a dozen different other things that tie into the overall structure of the application, you know, state management. And for styling in particular, people like we've ended up in a place where CSS variables is like the solution to this, but that is kind of something that evolved out of necessity and not something that's actually even covered in the standards. The Shadow DOM spec does not talk about CSS variables. The CSS variable spec doesn't talk about Shadow DOM. So the interaction between the two is undefined. And we just kind of landed in this de facto position because it was the only thing that even made Shadow DOM components even something that could feasibly work for practical application development. One of the things I'm excited about that's in the pipeline is CSS scoping standard, right? Which gives you a way to scope CSS without actually using Shadow DOM. I've had a browser tab open with the proposal for a while, and I haven't read through the current draft yet. I need to remember to do that. Yeah, the style customization thing is something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. And I'm always frustrated that the web platform evolved in such a way that we don't have a good answer for it today. And we're kind of stuck waiting for browsers to evolve until we can get a better answer. Another question in here is thoughts on Vue.js. I don't have many thoughts on it because I haven't actually ever sat down and used it, so I can't really say. The most I've done is spent like 15 minutes looking over their docs to get kind of like a high-level feel for it. And my impression of Vue was like, oh, this is what AngularJS would have evolved into, like, kind of, not exactly, but like what it could have evolved into if we had kept iterating on AngularJS instead of going off in the direction of Angular. Stephen, do you have any more in-depth thoughts?
No, you said exactly what I usually say, which is that like Vue.js, and again, I'm not a Vue.js expert, like, so there are probably many things that I'm not familiar with, but it seems like a really great version of AngularJS. And I mean, things have changed with Vue 3, like, and I haven't been keeping up as well as I wish I would, because it's the web keeps changing so fast.
Yeah, this is something I get regretful about, is that, you know, I'm so busy in my work now that I just have absolutely no motivation or energy to like stop working for the day with still like a dozen different things I need to get done, and then could be like, oh, let's go try out a new web framework or see what's up with the new version of Vue, or let's go learn Apollo or something like that.
I remember when we used to talk about GraphQL.
Still
I haven't
talking
heard
about.
I haven't heard new people using GraphQL in a while. Like, it solves a very clear problem, and for those people, it's perfect. But the complexities of GraphQL and the mental overhead deter a lot of developers.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to hack that camera off?
I could. I usually don't. I mean, no, I usually do, but the frame rate's so bad right now that I don't want to wait for that.
How come you're not playing on Stadia?
This is Stadia.
Oh, this is Stadia. Well, and why is your frame rate bad?
Because of the streaming, I think, and because this computer can't handle the screen sharing with high FPS, I think.
That makes sense.
Shooting me. Are you shooting me? Can you shoot through grass?
Not all grass, no. Do you have a tech rifle that lets you shoot through walls?
No.
You should get a tech rifle. Let's see. The question: will material library ever be responsive for all components? I don't have an answer, really. For something like probably not for all components, no. Because like you have something like table, right? Where in order for a table to, or you take the data that you're displaying in a table, in order to render that in a way that looks good on a small screen, you basically have to not use a table. You have to reformat it so that it is like blocks of data, and it just basically ceases to be a table at that point. And it has an entirely different like accessibility treatment. Sorting and pagination would look different, and virtual scrolling would work differently. And if we baked all of that into one monolithic component, it would be too big and complicated to be the best solution for the most people, right? We try to keep the components really single responsibility, right? So the table component is in charge of rendering rows of cells. That's it, the end. It doesn't know anything about sorting, doesn't know anything about pagination. And we defer to the application layer to compose those pieces together in whichever way works best for them. And I think that like for a table, doing something responsive is like, it's something the application has to decide, like what is the best way to present this data in my application to the users on small screen sizes. And I think that's the case for a number of components, right? There's never going to be one right answer for how does this component look different on smaller screens. That said, there are some components where we could do a better job. Like menus, for example, you could treat menus more like a modal dialog on small screen sizes than having a pop-up that's attached to a trigger. We do that for the dialogue now, but we don't do it for menus or for autocompletes. Although autocomplete, I guess, is different. It doesn't make any sense unless it's attached to the input. So there's definitely room for improvement. And some of that might come as part of our switching over to MDC. And then as we evolve with them over time, there might be improvements. But probably never something we're going to do for like every single component.
I'll ask a similar question. When are there going to be CDK equivalents for all the material components?
It's complicated. I want there to be, right? If I had free reign to just like ignore all meetings and ignore all email and ignore all quarterly goals, then I would probably sit down and build CDK versions of everything. But I can't do that. and still be doing my job effectively. So the biggest holdup for adding more stuff to the CDK is I want to as is on our roadmap, we're working on changing Angular material to be based on top of MDC Web so that it is using the canonical material design primitives for DOM structure and CSS. And I am working with the team that builds MDC Web, the material design team, towards trying to find a way to collaborate on something that is like at the level of the CDK that both of our component sets can use. And we are not really making a lot of motion on adding stuff until we get that figured out one way or another. We have some stuff in CDK experimental that people can use. In CDK experimental, there's menu, there's list box, there's combo box, there's a column resize, there's a dialog. And once we kind of figure out more of our strategy around where we're going with our like collaboration with the material design team, some of that may graduate into CDK full, or it may stay in experimental. We might go a different direction, but something I really want to do. It's just coordination.
Are things languishing a little bit in CDK experimental?
Say that again?
Material experimental. Are things kind of languishing a little bit in the experimental folder?
What do you mean by languishing?
Like, usually when you adopt an experimental, at least in my head, when I adopt an experimental API, there's some sort of lifespan where I know this thing will either be killed in the next 6 months or graduated. There are no such promises with CDK experimental or material experimental. And maybe it's just like an expectation setting exercise of like, these things are on a 6-year decision path. Or like, when you talk about CDK experimental or when we design for CDK experimental and material experimental, what is the mental model?
So there's a couple of different reasons why we might put something in experimental. So one is that we want to build something, but we're not ready to commit to a stable API for it yet. And so it ends up in experimental. So that's the case with the CDK menu, list box, and combo box. They were intern projects, and we wanted to let the interns build and publish something without fully committing to supporting that API in the long term. And so they're in experimental for now. And obviously I had a lot of guidance over the interns, so it's like very much in the direction I think it should go. But there are some shortcomings with the API that we can't solve without changes in the Angular framework. And those changes in the Angular framework are blocked on us finishing up the Ivy related projects that we're working on. And so that plays a part of it. Another thing is if we have some contributors who want to add something to the CDK, but we want to try it out in a few apps first before we commit to stabilizing it, that it ends up in there. And in terms of graduating things, it just honestly, it hasn't been a priority for the stuff that we have in there compared to other things we're doing. And Steven's gone. Let's see. Another question here is 2D grid drag and drop. Yeah, that's one of our top requested features. I don't have anything to commit to now, but whenever we get around to working on the next feature for either CDK or material, the top 2 features are virtual scroll for table and 2D drag drop. Those are next in the list. So as soon as we get to working on any of that stuff, it is very high in the priority list. Without Steven here, I don't know. How to banter anymore. So those of you who are, let's see. Oh, there's a question here. Can you replace Webpack in Angular? I don't think so. I think Angular CLI is like very deeply integrated with Webpack.
I was back, but I wasn't in the stream. I'm sorry. You can totally replace Webpack. You
Can
just have to
you?
rebuild all the things that we do with Webpack, and you have to build your own builder. Like there are teams that use like Clojure compiler, but it's not recommended. Like it's more work for you.
Yeah. Inside of Google, we don't use Webpack. We like Webpack is in the grand scheme of web ecosystem, Webpack is a relatively recent thing, and obviously Google has had build tools and serving infrastructure and bundlers and module splitting all built, a decade ago, and so all of our internal Google applications are based on Google's internal tech. So it is very possible to build Angular applications without Webpack. We do it all the time in Google, but it's using a separate suite of integrated technology. Let's see.
Do you like Webpack, Jeremy?
I honestly have no opinions about it, just because I'm so focused on mostly UI component stuff or framework stuff that this, like, when I do go and use the CLI to build something or test something, it's always like works good enough for me. If I was building a more sophisticated product, I might have more opinions.
This is why you don't try and switch computers in the middle of a live stream.
Yeah. But yeah, I have
You
no
can hear me though, Jeremy, right?
whatsoever.
I just can't hear you.
I can hear you, yeah. You can hear me?
Because I mean, do we really need to hear Jeremy? Do you want to start with your story of how you ended up at Google?
My story of how I ended up at Google is pretty boring. I graduated school. I went to University of Central Florida, which wasn't at the time, but is now the largest university in the country. And graduated. I worked at a small company in Orlando, Florida for a few years. Then I interviewed at Google and I did well on the interview. And then I got hired at Google and worked in New York for a few years. I worked on some ads products in New York. And while I was there, one of the products I was working on was basically the very first AngularJS app inside Google. They started with AngularJS at version like 0.7. And they started the whole trend of using AngularJS inside of Google, especially inside of ads. And through that, I got involved with the Angular community. I started running the New York Angular meetup. And through that, I started giving some talks. And through that, I ended up joining the Angular team. I like working on web infrastructure.
My story started, so I joined Google almost 5 years ago now. And for 15 years, I was basically at the same company. It was a startup in Minnesota. And we grew it from like 2 people up to like 400 people. And then we sold it. And so after we sold it, I was looking for, what do I want to do next? And one of the skill sets that I developed was this idea of talking to people to help them figure out how to solve their business problems with technology. And that ends up looking a lot like developer relations. And so I ended up joining a company called Trello. They have this project management solution. And then from there, I was there for like a year. And a Google recruiter reached out to me and they said, hey, do you want to, are you interested in interviewing at Google? And I said, no, I just joined this other company. I'm good. And then like I waited like 3 months, and 3 months later they pinged me again. They're like, "Are you interested in it? Like, are you interested in looking at one of our roles?" And I said, "Well, what's the role?" And they said, "We can't tell you, it's confidential." And when they said that, they had me. Basically, a confidential role at Google just sounds like the coolest thing ever. And so I had to go through the whole interview process. And after having gone through the interview process, I found out it was like the least confidential role ever, right? Like developer relations. Like you're literally as public as it gets at Google.
For an open source
They,
project.
on an open source project. So effectively, they tricked me, but by that point I was sold. I was like, okay, I've been a fan of Google a long time. Like I was a GDE before that. I've been a kind of Google product fanboy for a long time. So it wasn't odd ending up at Google. I never thought I'd end up at such a big company, but it's been good.
Stephen, what's the biggest challenge in your time working at Google?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a lot of different challenges at Google. Like there's challenges of being a big company, because while we're on the Angular team, we actually get to act like a startup like 99% of the time. 1% of the time, you don't get to act like a startup. You work at a big company and you have to figure out like big company policy and things like that. Yeah, maybe it's that 1% of the time where it's like we have to try and explain and rationalize how Angular fits into Google. Which like there's a lot of really good stories there, but it's hard because like you're like selling, you're like explaining why, and like going over history and trying to explain what open source is and why it's valuable. Like there's a lot of work to get people that don't understand Angular to understand Angular from the outside.
Yeah, it used to be harder before we had a dedicated web infrastructure group. Yeah, Google didn't always have one, like where Angular exists as part of a larger organization that is all like the web infrastructure at Google. And so it's like the Angular team, the Sass team, the Clojure compiler team. And it's a nice little organizational unit. That didn't always exist. Those teams were like scattered around the company. There was no Sass team. And so it was a little more chaotic, and you had to fight to justify why your team existed. For me, I think the biggest challenge of working at Google is that there's a white paper about this you can find if you do a Google search, but Google uses a monorepo approach to development, which means all of the code at Google is at head all the time, and there's only one version of any library, which means that for the thousands upon thousands of applications at Google, they're all using the same version of Angular, and they're all in the same source code repo, which means that anytime we make a change to Angular, that immediately affects all Angular applications at the same time everywhere. And this is fantastic for product teams, which means that they don't have to deal with their dependencies at all. Like they always have the latest version of Angular. They always have the latest version of, Sass or whatever else, right? Like all your infrastructure just gets updated for you automatically, right? And if you're like the Java team, you can make an improvement in like the memory usage or the performance of like array list or something, and that affects the entire Google fleet all at once, and it's a huge deal. But for us, it's actually quite difficult to land changes because of that, right? So we were talking about this earlier, right? If we want to make the typings on the Forms API stricter, that would be a breaking change for the whole company. And so we can't just make that change. We're responsible for not breaking applications. And so that's why we always have to, when we want to make a breaking change, we have to make the existing API continue to function, introduce the new API, and then incrementally move every application over to the new API and then delete the old one. And that is very time consuming, as you might imagine. And it reduces the rate at which we can execute on things because we have such a commitment to stability. That is like the big company, right? The developing at scale part of Google that makes progress more time consuming.
Oh, by the way, I think I fixed the my problems here. Should we see if you can actually see with more than 1 frame a second?
Yeah, that looks fine.
Okay. So note to self, don't try and use my work computer for gaming. It is not built for that.
It sure isn't.
Because like this is like a smooth almost 30 frames per second now, right?
Yeah, it looks normal.
Okay. Interview preparation tips. So what I did, there are like algorithms on the test. So what I did was I did hackerrank.com. It's changed now, but what it used to be was just like a list of like programming puzzles and problems. And so just making sure you're able to check boundary conditions and do all the normal like algorithms tasks. Like concatenate a bunch of strings or navigate a structure, create objects, do loops, like really, really basic programming stuff that like you probably can do in your sleep. You have to be able to think out loud and just kind of do it on the fly.
Yeah. I have 2 pieces of advice. So I've done about 150, I've conducted about 150 interviews. And my 2 pieces of advice are, one, you have to know all of the basics, like the back of your hand, right? You have to know hash maps and trees and sorting algorithms and binary search, right? All the like the basic CS concepts, algorithms, data structures. Like you just have to know that stuff. Period.
You don't have to know binary trees. If
I disagree. No.
Okay, I mean you've interviewed more than I have.
I've done 150 SWE interviews. You have to know binary trees. Period. You are very likely to be asked about it. Graph algorithms, right? BFS, DFS, minimum spanning tree, shortest path, Dijkstra's Kruskals. You have to know those things because they're very common. And
I feel like in my interviews, if I didn't know those things, I had to be able to solve the same problem. So like the optimal solution is that tree structure, right? Because we've been doing years and years of computer science, but there are other ways of solving those problems. And if you can kind of talk through it, that was enough, I believe.
Are you talking as a candidate or an interviewer?
That was my perspective as a candidate. Like I don't know all of the programming. Like it's been many, many years since I've done computer science.
Right.
School,
But
like,
your sample size there is 1.
Sure. Okay.
The reality is, and whether or not this is good or bad, I make no judgment of, but the reality is some interviewers will go into the interview with the mindset of, I am going to test that you know binary search trees. And if the candidate does not know that, they are considered to not have that expertise. You could make the argument that that's a bad metric upon which to measure people, but the reality is that happens.
Are you that interviewer? That if they don't
No. I mean, I have my questions, and the thing I'm looking for when I interview people is about their thought process. The other piece of advice I have is, all right, there's going to be 2 more. One is, a lot of times an interview question is going to be much easier than you think it is. I think a lot of candidates get caught up thinking that there is like some hyper genius infinity brain answer to a question, when in reality, I just want to know, like, can you write a nested for loop? So it is perfectly okay to start off a problem with a naive solution and go from there. The other advice that I have for interviews is, I'm going to pull up a link over here. And this is going to seem silly, but I'm very sincere about this. I'm posting a video in the chat. This is a video of an ice cream expert who, I love this brand of ice cream, by the way, Jenny's Ice Cream. They are presented with two different ice creams, A and B, and they have to figure out which is the more expensive one. And they do that for like a series of ice creams. And the thing that this video does really well that's relevant to tech interviewing is pay attention to how she breaks down the problem in front of her into individual pieces of, in the case of ice cream, right? There's texture, there's smell, there's like the like resistance when the spoon goes through. There's the taste, of course, and the way she talks through breaking down those criterias as she works through the problem. That is how you want to be communicating as a candidate during the interview. You want to absorb the question in front of you and then start talking through your thought process of how you're dissecting the problem. Because the main thing the interview should be testing is not the knowledge that you have, although that is a part of it, but it is the thought process of how you break down and approach the problem. I'm hoping someday someone comes to me and says, I'm so glad you sent me that ice cream video. It helped me get a software engineering job.
So Jeremy, hopefully you can see that I have a sniper rifle and I have a rifle. And I use sniper rifle on anyone that doesn't have evasion or whatever that's called, where your bullets just go crazy. And then everybody else, I just use the rifle. So you can actually probably see my equipment now.
Yeah, I barely used guns the whole game. I just used hacks.
So I have a smart sniper rifle, power assault rifle, and then Skippy.
You should have, you should get a tech precision rifle.
I don't. Why tech precision versus power assault?
Because tech weapons can shoot through walls.
Is that? Do I need that?
I found it useful. I liked the tech weapons a lot. And if you level them all the way up, one of the higher level tech things is that it just ignores armor. And the Widowmaker
rifle, though. I do like 70,000 damage.
Let's see. There's a question here. How often do you do overtime when working on Angular features? If there's some deadline or a feature needs to be released, it doesn't really work that way. We first of all, Google employees are all salaried, so we don't have a concept of overtime per se. And in general, our management chain cares more about our work-life balance than any feature delivery. This is why we do part of what goes into our time-based releases, right? We do major versions roughly every 6 months, and that major version will have in it whatever gets done in that 6-month period. And certainly we have certain things that we aim to land in certain releases, but if they slip, we don't ever be oh, well, we better get a bunch of people working late so that it makes the release. Instead, it's well, guess that's just going in the next release after this one then.
I've never been asked to work overtime.
What's that?
I've never been asked to work overtime.
Yeah, never. That's not to say
I may have worked overtime, but I wanted to. I was
yeah. That's not to say it's never happened. Back when we were launching the beta, the very first beta for Angular Material, I was working till 2 a.m. every night because I really cared about launching it by a certain time, right? And I was trying to meet a deadline, but it was a deadline I had set. And so it was an entirely decision of my own making. And if my boss at the time, which was Brad, if Brad had actually known I was doing that, he would have told me to stop. He took some falling damage there.
Drop. Because there's a thing you can do where if you double jump near the ground, you can avoid massive amounts of fall damage.
Let's see. There's a question here. Which tool do you prefer for like front-end Angular testing? For Angular material, we just use like straight up Karma plus Angular's APIs, and that's it. For end-to-end tests, we use Protractor, but like really, like it's very little beyond a wrapper around WebDriver. If you are a consumer of Angular, the CDK test harness infrastructure and Angular material test harnesses are highly recommended for me, at least. I think of all the things we've done with the Angular components repo, but like Angular material, Angular CDK, the component harnesses in the CDK are one of the things I'm most proud of. And I think once you spend some time using them, you will see the value they provide, and it will be hard to stop using them. But that said, I personally don't have a lot of experience using other testing tools like, Jest or Cypress or anything, just because those aren't technologies that are used inside Google. We talked a little bit
about
about
get a lot of people this year building their own harnesses, because like there's so many people that aren't taking advantage of the idea of not testing the implementation of a component.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I will make my ngconf talk about, is making component harnesses.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it's because we talked about that before. I think maybe the missing piece is like take some like random component and show like, oh snap, get out of here.
Oh yeah, you stumbled on the worst part of the game.
The police?
Mm-hmm.
But all you have to do is stop and then hide.
Honestly, I just reloaded every time the police got mad at me.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just hide here.
Let's see. Question here. What is your standpoint on making modules optional, making Angular more reactive, and using Angular zoneless? So I'll go in reverse order. Angular zoneless, by that I'll say like by making zones optional, right? That is one of the most important things on our roadmap, because Zone.js doesn't work with native async await. And as that moves into, like, as people want to start delivering ES 2017 modules, that's going to start to become a problem. And so
let me say a question to interrupt you on there. We could configure our build system to continue to transpile async await. Could we not? Like it would be non-standard tooling, which we want to avoid. But maybe not at any cost.
It's totally doable, right? And there are other things we can do as well beyond that, right? We could compile down to native async await, and then also, like, as part of the build tooling, insert an extra API call after the await to basically tell zones to tick. That is another solution to that problem, right? It's not an unsolvable problem, but there are other issues with zones that, in my mind, makes optional zoneless very important to us. I think the debugging experience without zones is much better. I think the performance without zones is much better.
More so for component authors, though, right? Like this is the problem with zones is for people that don't want to think about change detection.
So that perk shard, Stephen, when you pick it up, press F. Or no, R, sorry. Press R when you get it to learn instead of just take.
Why?
Because then you'll get 2.
R gives me 2?
Yeah, so there's a bug, right? They haven't fixed it yet. If you pick up the perk shard, you get the perk. If you learn it, and then it adds it to your inventory and you get it again.
So debugging and performance, but not necessarily ease of development or simplicity.
It depends on what we replace it with, honestly. because like the way change detection works in Angular, there's like two parts of it, right? There's how do you determine when change detection should run, and then like how does change detection actually work? The how does change detection actually work is totally, it doesn't like, it's not connected to zones at all, right? The whole like going through your expressions and doing dirty checking and updating the DOM, none of that changes is related to zones. Zones purely determines when does change detection run. And what we need to answer is, without zones, when does change detection run? And we don't have an answer for that yet. There are lots of ideas, but nothing committed to yet. So that's zoneless. Making Angular more reactive it's complicated. It's complicated because we have about an equal amount of people over here saying we want Angular to be more reactive and more integration with like RX and streams. And then we have a roughly equal amount of people on the other side saying we would like Angular to be less reactive and less RxJS, fewer streams. And it's unclear what the best way to go forward and like making the most people happy. It might be that we've hit a sweet spot in that there's an equal amount of people on each side. But it's something that we think about as we go into new planning, new stuff. And once we finally do delete View Engine, right, the system before Ivy, we'll probably be thinking more about like actually acting on this.
I love the solution where we partner with someone like NGRX and reactivity becomes more pluggable so that they get the APIs they need in Angular to offer reactivity for people that want it, but then maybe it doesn't become a requirement for every developer.
Yeah, that is that's doable, right? But you also run the risk of then you have two ways to do things, right? And
Yep.
we're getting away from the like Angular is opinionated
Yes.
kind of philosophy we try to have. And then
Double-edged sword, yep.
the last thing here is making modules optional. Yep, that's something also on our in our backlog of we want to make ng modules optional. It's not something we've been actively working on, but it's definitely something we want to do.
Yeah, but and Ajit says, can we make it opt-in? Opt-in means that there's two ways of building the application, which is something that we would like to avoid. We'd like there just to be one way so that no matter what Angular project you look at, it always looks the same. But we are also kind of keenly aware of the limits of that. So that's something we're exploring a lot this year when it comes to linting and testing and all these sorts of things. You should get this car, by the way, Jeremy. It's quite stellar.
Which one is that?
Elbourn.
Yeah, I like the motorcycles more. I just find them easier to drive around with.
Really? This one is pretty easy to handle.
Also, I like doing big Akira slides all the time, every time I make a turn.
Did you see the big glitch that was happening earlier when Skippy was... Also, what do I do with Skippy? Do I say I want to return him or no?
I have no idea. I never actually used it enough to advance whatever quest it has.
Oh, did you know you're supposed to pick the opposite of whatever you want in terms of head targeting or body targeting?
Nope.
Yeah, because after you kill 50 people or maim 50 people, it switches, which is like super frustrating.
Yeah, I never really used it. I just stuck with Widowmaker the whole game. Have you acquired Widowmaker yet?
I don't know. Is it craftable?
It's an iconic weapon you get from Panam's quest.
Maybe. I feel like I'm pretty happy with my weapon, so I don't really pay much attention.
Let's see. On change detection, currently I'm developing in which I'm encountering a problem with select dropdown not populating values in reactive form. That's probably not something we can help with on stream. I meant to say that towards the beginning, is like I feel like we should have one thing we say for streams is that the thing we can't do is like debug issues. Because we'll never have enough information to really give any kind of semblance of an accurate answer.
I just find this game so gorgeous.
Yeah, it looks fantastic, right? Like any angle on Night City is a painting, right?
Oh, there we go.
And the one of the things I think is really underrated in this game as well is the facial animations. Right? Like I doubt there's any point in this game where you're like talking to an NPC and they're like their face or their eyes does something weird.
I take screenshots all the time because I'm just like astounded. Like the first time I walked out of my apartment and Jackie's sitting there like eating ramen or whatever, I'm like, I was just stunned.
Mm-hmm.
Because like he turns towards you and he's like looking at you and he's like looking down at his thing and it's like that all feels supernatural no matter where I go.
Yeah. I was watching a video about how they did the facial animations and like matching the mouth movements to the sound. And they're actually using a tool that like breaks down the audio recording into the individual phenomes. And then that is annotated.
Phenomes or phonemes?
Phonemes. I don't actually remember. I always say it wrong. And that is annotated with the emotion that is being used as part of the performance. And it's also includes the actual script as well. So the system inputs the script, the audio performance, and annotation of the emotion being used. And it maps those into the facial animation. And I could imagine a world 10 years from now where you've applied some really fine-tuned machine learning models to that, especially even for like figuring out the emotion from the performance. And in 2031, it'll be trivial for developers to have realistic facial animations.
Real facial capture? Did they do motion capture for this one?
I don't think they did.
Because they did for the maybe the Keanu Reeves, right? Like
for Keanu Reeves maybe. I don't know. But for the majority of NPCs, I don't think they did motion capture because they just have so many people, right?
Yeah.
And you can only do it in one language anyway.
Oh yeah, the whole like multi-language thing still blows my mind.
Yeah, that was a criticism Ghost of Tsushima got because it is a very Japanese flavored game. Like it is set in Tsushima, which is an island of Japan. The characters are Japanese. It takes place in like as part of Japan's history. But all of the facial animations are lip synced to the English dialogue. And so if you switch it to the Japanese dialogue, the speech doesn't line up anymore.
Oh, I thought you said they did it in multiple languages.
No. Cyberpunk did a different thing, right? Different system. Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh. Sorry.
Just used like motion capture, if I remember correctly.
I've never heard of Jade before, so I'm looking.
Oh,
so we got the
I've heard of Jade, and the answer is no. There's no plans to ever use Jade in any way whatsoever. I think that Jade is more of a niche thing than just like writing straight up HTML.
Yeah, I mean it has the same problem of being a meta language that we have in our templates, but it doesn't have the benefit of also just being able to use straight HTML for HTML. I think. I mean, that's my hot take, as the kids say.
I don't think it's that hot.
Well, I mean, maybe Jade's going to become the technology of the future. Maybe browsers are going to implement native Jade. Probably not.
Nah. I think you're more likely to see Sass supported in the browser or TypeScript than any kind of HTML variant.
I think we should wrap up, Jeremy. So let's do one closing thought on Hades, one closing thought on Cyberpunk, and one closing thought on Angular.
Mm-hmm. All right. Closing thought on Hades is you should give it a shot.
Now that I'm on a real machine that has more than 2 frames a second.
When you're on your real machine, it is a masterpiece of storytelling and tying a well-known and well-used gameplay mechanic into a really novel narrative structure. Cyberpunk, play it in 2 years when the AI is hopefully better. Beautiful foundation, just needs some better engineering systems.
Okay, and Angular.
It sounded like you said Enya, but you probably said Angular.
I mean, if you want to give a hot take on Enya too, go for it.
My hot take on Enya is that has Enya even put out an album in the last 10 years?
I've not listened to any new albums.
All I can think of Enya is just like Lord of the Rings. Anyway, if I have a hot take on Angular, it's I don't know. I'm looking forward to the day we can do adding directives to host elements. I'm pushing for it a lot. I think it's like the most powerful feature we could add, and it unlocks a massive amount of powerful like meta-programming functionality and composition.
My hot take on Hades is another game. I mean, I like good stories, but I'd almost rather read a book for stories. I mean, although Cyberpunk sucked me in, so who knows? I'll give it a thorough try. I'll give it at least half an hour.
Have you read Stormlight 4, by the way?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Why didn't we just do a live stream about Rhythm of War? That would have been all right. Is that what we're doing this weekend?
Next time. Do we want to do this like once a week?
Sure.
Every other week? Whatever.
Maybe not 2.5 hours. Maybe like cap it at an hour and a half or 2.
Yeah, that would be smart. Maybe like just like 90 minutes every Thursday. Also, style sheets for directives. That's another thing I've been pushing for. That I've been advocating for. I want it as well.
Is it in the issue tracker? Do we have it? I haven't seen that one on the roadmap.
It's not in the project priority backlog because it's not going to be made a priority until we delete View Engine. So,
could Christoph write a PR that adds style sheets for directives?
No, because we have to figure out how they work with view encapsulation, which is going to have to be debated by a bunch of people.
Okay. Well, someone should kick off the debate in an issue on GitHub, I think.
No?
I
don't have the capacity to even think about it right now. That's the reason why a lot of PRs like take so long to kind of reach a resolution, is because like I'll show you a sneak peek. Like this is my to-do list right now, and then on any given day I have like 10 to 20 code reviews to do and a dozen or so emails from Googlers asking for like help and support. So finding the time to go to PRs and like just sit down and think about how things should work is sometimes it's just too much.
All right. Anything else before we sign off?
Well, thank you to our let's see how many people are here. The 10 people hanging out with us, and next time we'll do a better job promoting this maybe. Plan
I
for
will
it
use
more
the
than the
big
day
computer
before.
from the start.
All
We've
right.
had 118 views, so like this is done pretty well. And 5 likes, so people like it. So if you like this content, so we did this on my Demos of the Angular channel, where I normally just post like tutorials of like, hey, I built a thing. How did this work? If people like this sort of more informal format, yeah, give the video a like, leave a comment, and we will do it more often because there's so many great people on the Angular team, and we could do more of this. Also, if you like the video games in the background, tell us if you like that, because I think Jeremy and I both like video games in the background. It's just like showing off the dumb things we like. Because like we could just talk about Angular, but that would almost be boring. Like we talk about Angular all day, but if we could talk about like Angular and Rhythm of War, that's like a really good combination for me.
Yes, this was appealing to me because I got to play Hades and then also just chat while doing it.
Awesome. So it's easier for us, but let us know if you like this sort of kind of blended mixed content, because yeah, it's hopefully shows that we're human. We don't know everything. I'm really bad at Hades. I have a work computer that's very bad at video games. All sorts of new insights and learnings.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All
Bye.
right. Get some sleep.